Okay, so today we're going to take a look at, the role of conservative organizations in the U.S. political scene.
Okay.
Um, and you sent over a ton of like reports, analyses, even like internal organizational docs and stuff.
Right.
So we're going to try and get to the bottom of how all this stuff works. Like, how are
Yeah.
they funded? How are they trying to win elections?
Yeah.
And really, like, their whole strategy for how they try to shape what people are even talking about, you know?
Yeah, it's really fascinating, I think.
Yeah, and it's a pretty diverse landscape too, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about like think tanks and foundations and paxies all working in different ways.
Exactly. All these
So,
different pieces working together.
yeah, and we'll even get into this whole idea of the Overton window and how these groups are playing the long game.
Right.
Like they're not just thinking about the next election cycle, they're thinking like way down the line.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at, the big names everyone's heard of, like the Heritage Foundation, AEI, Cato, but also some of the newer players and, of course, the groups that are funding all this and dropping millions on elections.
Yeah, the money side of it's really interesting.
Yeah, so let's start there, actually. Like, where does all this money come from for these organizations?
Well, it's a real mix, you know. You've got big individual donors, corporations, and then a lot of money coming from these foundations.
Right.
One thing that's important to note is that you don't always get full transparency.
Oh, interesting.
Like the Heritage Foundation, for example, they don't have to disclose all their donors.
Really?
Yeah, so we don't always have the complete picture, but
So we know some of the big players, though, right?
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, for Heritage, some of the biggest funders have been like the National Christian Charitable Foundation,
Right.
the Sarah Scaife Foundation, and they had a huge fundraising year recently too, like record breaking.
Wow.
Now, AEI is a bit different. They don't take any government money.
Hmm.
And they've historically gotten support from a whole range of people and foundations.
Right, like-
Well, like the Lilly Endowment's been a big one.
Yeah.
The Smith Richardson Foundation, too. And even back in the day, like the Rockefeller Brothers Trust,
Interesting.
Bethlehem Steel, Exxon, all sorts.
Wow, so it's really across the board.
Yeah, and lately they've been getting major contributions from groups like Donors Capital Fund, Donors Trust.
Okay, so those foundations like Donors Trust, are they kind of like a middleman then?
Yeah, exactly. They let donors support all sorts of conservative causes, sometimes with more anonymity than giving directly.
Huh. Okay, that makes sense. And what about the Petances then?
Oh, the P-Tances, that's where the money's really aimed at elections. You know, like
Right.
they never back down. The group backing DeSantis, they raised a ton of money, and a big chunk of that came from places like Empower Parents Pay.
I see.
And then you've got the Congressional Leadership Fund, CLF. They're focused on House races, and they rake in millions every quarter from big donors like Jeff Yass, Timothy Mellon.
So all this money that's pouring in, what are they actually spending it on?
Well, for the think tanks like Heritage and AEI, a big part of it goes to research publications.
Right.
You know, putting out those big reports and articles, staff salaries, of course.
Right.
And then they have these major initiatives they're funding, too. Like Project 2025 at Heritage is a really big one.
Okay.
And they also give out grants, make political contributions, even do some lobbying.
Huh. Interesting. So it's not all just, writing papers.
No, definitely not.
They're really active.
Yeah, and then for the super PACs like Never Back Down and CLF, most of their spending is on independent expenditures.
Like what?
Basically, they're spending money to support their chosen candidates, but not directly coordinating with their campaigns.
So like what kind of stuff are they doing?
Mostly advertising. You know those campaign ads you see everywhere?
Right.
Rallies, events, that sort of thing.
Okay, so it's really about trying to get their people elected then.
Absolutely. That's the short game.
Right.
But then you've got groups like Heritage Action that are more about grassroots activism, getting people out to vote, organizing protests, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And then the Club for Growth, they're really active in supporting certain candidates, especially in primaries.
Interesting. And I guess the think tanks are also playing a part in shaping the whole debate, even if they're not directly involved in campaigns.
Yeah, their lobbying efforts really make a difference in what policies are even being considered by lawmakers.
Right.
And that obviously has a big impact on what voters are hearing about.
So they're playing both sides then, like the short-term election game and then this longer game of ideas.
Exactly. And that's where this whole Overton window idea comes in.
Right. So explain that a bit more, because I think some people listening might not be familiar with that.
So the Overton window is basically the range of ideas that are considered acceptable in public discourse.
Okay.
Like what policies are seen as mainstream versus radical.
Right.
And these think tanks, they're really key players in trying to shift that window.
You mean like they're trying to change what people think is normal?
Yeah, exactly. They're putting out research publishing books like Heritage's Mandate for Leadership was a really influential one.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
And they use their platforms, their websites, events to promote ideas that might be seen as fringe right now, but they're hoping to make them mainstream over time.
So what kind of issues are they focusing on now?
Well, it varies a lot.
Yeah.
Historically, Heritage was really big on missile defense.
Right.
AEI was a major force behind neoconservatism.
Okay.
And these days, they're all over issues like climate change. This Project 2025 from Heritage is really interesting.
What's that about?
It's basically a blueprint for what they want a future Republican administration to do if they win in 2024.
Wow. So like specific policies.
Yeah, everything from shrinking the federal government to changes on things like abortion, LGBTQ plus rights, education, all sorts of stuff.
So they're really trying to lay the groundwork.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to define the agenda for the future.
So when we step back and look at all this, what's the main takeaway for people?
I think it's the scale and how interconnected everything is.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this huge network of conservative organizations all working together with a lot of money behind them.
Right.
And they've got their fingers in every pie, from think tanks generating ideas to PACs influencing elections.
Yeah.
It's all very strategic. They're playing the short game and the long game.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, like the level of coordination.
Yeah, it really is.
So for everyone listening out there, think about this for a minute. With all this money and effort going into shifting the Overton window, how do you think that's going to change what we talk about politically in the years to come?
Right.
Like what ideas are going to be seen as normal or even possible?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
It's something we all need to be aware of, I think. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Definitely lots to think about.